CIA Phase 1 and from Frank. My name's Kate Greenham and I'm the head of the Wireless Infrastructure Strategy Programme Delivery. So this falls into my remit. I'll pass on to Paul.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, Paul Clegg, one of the development leads in the Future Network Programmes team here in Digital Infrastructure. We're now in DSIT. I hope you're enjoying our new branding. It's very colourful. So yeah, looking forward to getting into this. So I'll just pass over to Jamie now to say hello.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I'm Jamie Virgintek. So I'm one of the policy leads in the Wireless Infrastructure and Policy team in DSIT. I'm the strategy lead for Connected Places at DSIT. So I will hand over. I think that's all of us speaking today, isn't it, on our side? So shall I get straight into the policy context? Cool. Next, can we go into the first slide then, please, Alberto? Great, thanks. So hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. So as Alberto mentioned, before we get into the details of the competition, we thought we'd just spend a few minutes going over the background and the policy context of the programme. So as hopefully you all know, DSIT places a big focus on digital connectivity because we all know that the telecoms networks in the UK provide the key infrastructure that underpins the economy. And we know it's going to be hugely important for unlocking opportunities for economic growth going forward. Digital infrastructure is vital to realise the ambition that the government set out in its digital strategy last year. So harnessing digital transformation, building a more competitive and innovative digital economy. You've probably seen also in our science and technology framework that future telecoms is one of our key technologies that we've identified going forward. And also improving digital connectivity is obviously one of the government's key levelling up priorities. Advanced wireless connectivity in particular is going to be key to all of this. 5G, from our research, has potential to unlock significant economic and social benefits. So we think that widespread 5G adoption could create a cumulative productivity benefit of up to 159 billion up to 2035. In particular, the adoption of things like smart 5G connectivity and services in places provide huge benefits for UK towns and cities. And as you all know, 5G is a foundational technology for other technologies, such as helping sectors across. So it will help sectors across the economy maintain their international competitiveness. But as you'll all know, network densification is required to meet the growing demand for connectivity, and new services that standalone 5G and also other advanced networks will enable, particularly where we're going to need extra capacity for services in high demand areas. The use of public sector assets to host this network infrastructure is going to become increasingly important going forward. So I hope that you've all read our recently published wireless infrastructure strategy. So as part of that strategy, we set out a new ambition for nationwide coverage of standalone 5G to all populated areas of the UK by 2030. But it also provides a framework to ensure that people and businesses and public services across the UK are able to realise the full benefits of 5G and other advanced wireless connectivity. As part of the strategy, we made a commitment to continuing to address practical barriers to deployment of advanced wireless infrastructure. And this includes helping local authorities to facilitate that network deployment. So the Digital Connectivity Infrastructure Accelerator Programme to DCIA, as you'll all know, that explored the challenges of using publicly owned land, buildings and street furniture to support digital infrastructure. And has helped many places in the telecoms industry resolve a number of practical issues involving rolling out advanced wireless connectivity. So the Smart Infrastructure Pilots Programme, it builds on the successes of DCIA in support of our ambitions that we set out in the wireless infrastructure strategy. And I think I won't go on too much, I'll leave it there as there's a lot to get through today. And I'm going to hand over to Kate, who's going to talk to you in a bit more detail and a bit more overview of the competition. So that's it from me, so thanks.
Thanks, Jamie. Just want to move on to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. So as Jamie just said, this is Smart Infrastructure Pilots Programme, SIPP for short. It's a direct continuation and extension of Phase 1. So obviously within Phase 1, a lot of local authorities have taken part in either the actual pilots themselves or in early adopters groups. So we've had an opportunity to kind of approach Treasury and put a business case to them, of which we got funding for this programme. Unlike phase one, this is match funded. Phase one was 100% funding. So I know that's been some questions have been raised as to that match funding already, and I expect there will be some questions, and we'll address those later on in the day. So the phase two contains the extension of the digital asset mapping platform for a further 6 months in selected local authority areas. And it also includes this competition, which we're talking about today, the Smart Infrastructure Pilots Programme. So what we have got is 1.5 million, and that's available up to 6 local authority areas. So that will be divided amongst, and it is not 1.5 million each, just to clarify. So the expectation is that we would, following a successful competition, hopefully award to 6 local authorities, of which you would receive £250,000 each, and that would be matched by the bidder. And we will, again, as I say, come on to as to what that match could look like, and I'm sure that there will be plenty of interesting questions raised. So the idea for this is that we will continue from phase one, where phase one was, amongst many things already mentioned, we designed and created some publicly available standards. So those standards that were created, in particular PAS 191, we now look to apply those standards into a pilot environment across the 6 authorities, learn from the understanding, look at lessons learned, create some sort of best practice at the end of it, which will then hopefully allow deployment across the UK. So if we can just move on to the next slide. So hopefully through the guidance that we've already issued, we do talk about PAS 191, what the specification is. So the purpose of PAS 191 is obviously, growing demand needs to lead on to increased network diversification. We know that there needs to be an increase in small cell deployment. So how to do that? We know there's a lot of interest from MNOs, local authorities already looking at these things. In particular, we want to look at small cell deployment, EV charging, IoT, traffic management, CCTV, environmental monitoring. So these are all the assets or all the use cases that we would be looking at having different variations across all of the pilots, essentially. So the existing specification and standards that were before didn't specifically consider street furniture, which is why we commissioned BSI to do PAS 190 and PAS 191. So PAS 190 is around the existing columns, and 191 is around the creation of new multi-purpose street columns. So we very much are looking at the application of those specifically in this program. And on the next slide, we'll just give you a sense of, with absolute thanks to Paul for this genius replication of a lamppost, a smart lamppost that is. These are all of the use cases that we are potentially looking at as part of this program. And this is very much just to give you a sense. It's not that we want you to do all of these on one post. We're looking at something around 2 use cases per post, and these types of use cases to be demonstrated across the portfolio of the 6 pilots, but also could be across the actual program. So you might look at doing some use cases in kind of like a non-contiguous allocation across the area that you're looking at. So obviously, as I mentioned, we've got 5G small cells, CCTV, sensors, EV charging. So these are all the things that we would like you to be looking at. And yeah, hopefully there will be some good questions and eventually some good bids. So around the bids, I think it's Paul next who's going to give you a better sense of the timescales and what comes next, essentially. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate and Jamie, for setting the background to this. Going to spend a bit of time now getting into the detail of this competition. You'll see we are trying to do things a bit differently this time around. We've kind of heard a lot of feedback from previous competitions we've run through the program. Yeah, we are trying things differently. So next slide, please, Alberto. Right, so one of the first differences, and don't bulk too much, is that we launched on Monday, and the competition closes on the 7th of July, just before midnight. So it's a shorter than normal competition window of 4 weeks. However, we've attempted to simplify the application process and the documentation and evidence we require. And we've thought about other things we want to do a bit differently to try and help you. I'll say more about that later, but we hope that this provides you with sufficient time to submit your bids. So then we'll assess. We want to turn this around quickly, so you can get started on delivery. So we'll assessment of bids and interviews there. We won't be interviewing, sorry, I don't know where that came from. We'll assess bids in July and we will let you know at the end of July. We want to mobilise quickly over August with a view to starting delivery in September this year, with funding running until the end of March 2025. So next slide, please. Yeah, so as Kate said, we'll be providing up to 250k to each of the 6 successful LAs, and that's to be used to procure and install the new multi-purpose columns based on the PAS 191 standards. Bidders will be expected to secure equivalent funding from relevant suppliers for the cost of the use case infrastructure and the associated costs of trialing that infrastructure on the columns. So this is a condition now from Treasury. We need to have this match funding. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later, about what it actually means in practice for you. Basically, we are receptive to how you go about doing this. But I'll get onto that in a later slide. And the final thing is that, again, we're trying something a bit different. So for local authorities in England and Wales, we're going to use Section 31 of the Local Government Act to grant award. We've heard your feedback that for you, it's more efficient use of your time. It gives you more flexibility. For us as well, we want you to do that. We know in the past that it's been quite resource intensive, the process that we've applied. So we're going to use the LGA for England and Wales. We can't use it for any successful projects in Scotland and Northern Ireland. So we'll continue to fund under Section 8 of the Industrial Development Act. However, and this is really important, we will aim to ensure that those Scotland or Northern Ireland authorities will not incur a higher burden than those funded under the LGA, and that's in line with the new burdens doctrine. So we'll aim to streamline the whole GFA process. GFAs will continue to be legally binding, but we'll aim to streamline them and simplify them as much as possible to bring them in line with how we will contract with those funded under the LGA. So with them, it will be memoranda of understanding, non-legally binding, but we'll aim to have parity. So under whatever scheme you're funded, we'll treat you the same way is the ambition, basically. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the competition guidance and supporting documentation are all on gov.uk. So I think, as I said, the key thing here, it's a shorter window. It may seem challenging, and we can kind of get into this in a Q&A perhaps, compared to previous competitions, but we think we've aimed to make it realistic. We think it's realistic for a number of reasons. So we're trialing a more streamlined and less bureaucratic approach than previously, and that starts with this application process. So we've gone for fewer, more direct questions, less waffle to give us the evidence that we need, but to minimize the time you have to spend pulling together a bid. Reduce word count, requiring less detail, just the one application form to complete by the applying LA. So we're not looking for the kind of really long, detailed finance forms we have looked for in the past. It won't be consortia applying, so we don't need any kind of complex partnership agreements. We do, though, need to see the LAs setting out in their bid what suppliers they'll be working with. So letters of support can help with that. And again, you know, we keep coming back to this, but the match funding could well be like the hardest bit of this for you within the time frame, but I'll talk about that in the next slide. I think our rationale for this shorter window is to give you more time to spend on delivery. So it is a shorter window. There are new processes, so throughout the competition we'll do our usual running a mailbox. You can send through any questions you have, any clarification questions, and we will do our best to get you a full response as quickly as possible, and we'll bring in the expertise from across the team, from commercial, from legal, from technical, so that you're as informed as possible while you're drafting your bid. So we are here, to help you through that process. Then, we'll kind of run through the normal process over July once your bids are in. So we will assess, we will let you know the outcome, no interviews, you can get feedback upon request, and then we'll work with successful applicants over August. That's agreeing the MOUs or the GFAs, with delivery expected to start in September, we hope. Next slide, please. Okay, so the eligibility criteria must be an eligible UK local authority, and we set out in the guidance what we mean by that. You must confirm and demonstrate the match funding. So our grant is for the procurement of the columns. You're expected to get equivalent money or higher, maybe wishful thinking, but it can be higher. It has to be equivalent. It can't be lower. And that's for the cost of the use case infrastructure and associated costs of trialing the UK use cases on the column. So I think, as I said, we're receptive to a range of arrangements depending on your circumstances, and that can include existing and complementary investment from LAs in your infrastructure. So both new and ongoing procurement rollouts of relevant use case infrastructure from suppliers are considered eligible. So this isn't exhaustive, but possible examples include bringing the fiber backhaul connectivity to the newly purchased columns, adapting or upgrading existing connectivity because of the requirements of the new columns, including the new columns in ongoing or planned rollouts of changes or improvements to existing infrastructure, so LED upgrades, EV charging points for street lamps, any IoT sensors on columns or other street furniture for environmental monitoring, traffic management, or as part of existing small cell deployments on local assets from MNOs or other network providers. So, we want to be flexible here. And we are, really happy to engage with you on what that means for you. So moving on, the next two eligibility criteria, these are mandated from the centre, basically. So NCSC, you can't have any high-risk vendors in your project. We understand that, though, for some MNOs who have HRV equipment in their networks, they can be used, of course, but our grant can't be used to buy any additional equipment or services from HRVs. And then the final point of this comes from the Trade Sanctions Act. So no Russian or Belarusian entities anywhere in your project. I hope it's understandable why, given where we are and given the position of this government. So lots to take in. Next slide, please, Alberto. So again, the assessment process, we've kept the structure and approach that we've applied before, but we've tried to strip it back to focus on kind of what we really need to know. We've tried to cut away the waffle as much as possible, proportionate to the award and how we want to grant that award. So we'll be assessing you against 4 key areas. So number 1, relevant experience, your local partnerships, involvement in other initiatives relating to smart infra deployment. Number 2, your capacity to work with partners and installing equipment on the new multi-purpose columns. And then benefits and outcomes, evidence that you can identify, measure and share those. And then finally, it's weighted so 50% of your application is all around, can you deliver this? Do you have the funding for it? And will you get value for money for it? So that's what we're particularly interested in. Next slide. So subsidy control. So, I mean, there's a lot of text here. Basically, we want to deliver this through a no subsidy route to LA. So as an intragovernmental funding transfer from us to you under the 2022 Act. So you will need to ensure that you're working and complying with the Act. So you're responsible for all spending incurred, which may have subsidy implications, depending on any onward relationships with partners receiving funding. It may require the use of the R&D streamline route or another compliant route. You should make clear what you're using through the application. You should obtain your own independent advice while delivering, and if we ask that you share that with us and our legal teams. And then, you know, if you receive a subsidy in breach, you may be required to pay it back plus interest. So there's more information in the guidance. And again, I keep saying, you know, we are here to give you advice if you're unsure on any of this. So submit it to the mailbox. We'll get our legal and commercial colleagues to give you the response that you need. Talking of which, next slide. So that's how to get us. There are a few of us involved in this. We monitor the mailbox all the time. You will get a response as quickly as possible. We'll bring in kind of function expert advice if needed, so it may take a little bit longer, but we know it's only 4 weeks, so you need a quick turnaround, and we appreciate that. We will aggregate, make anonymous, and add to an ongoing clarification log on gov.uk. So what is relevant to one bid may well be relevant to another, so you will have access to that information. We won't publish anything commercial in confidence, of course, and we'll check with you before we publish anything. So 5G adoption, -inquiries@tcms.gov.uk, that's where you can get hold of us. But there's an opportunity now, that's enough from us, to get into some Q&A. So next slide, Alberto. So, okay, so people have been posting some Q&A already. Let's have a look.
Well, whilst you're just having a look, it might just be a good opportunity just to mention about 5G innovation regions. So there's probably lots of people on this call who did respond to our pre-competition market engagement. So thank you very much. We did have a lot of interest from across all regions of the UK, as we did expect. So we are now kind of analysing all the feedback received and everyone's kind of responses to the questions that we posed. So we're taking a look at that, and we will effectively use all that feedback in the final stage of our development of the competition. We will be looking to launch the competition probably summertime. Obviously, we can't say specifically because there's lots of approvals and things that we have to get first, but we are looking at early summer of that competition launch. It will be a longer competition window than this, and you know, very happy to if there's any particular questions to submit again through the mailbox that Paul just said. We are working a lot in the background on the programme to make sure that it is something that is obviously welcomed by regions, and it's obviously of use to you all as well, and that meets all of the objectives set out in the wireless infrastructure strategy. So you will hear more in due course, but just wanted to thank you all, and just for you to be aware that the next steps are obviously competition launch, which we are looking for early summer. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Great. So from Catherine, Connecting Cumbria is working on behalf of 2 unitary authorities. Are joint bids supported? Good question. Kate, what's your view on that?
I knew this was going to come to me.
Yeah.
It's something that we have not considered, to be fair. However, you may have got a specific local need for that. So I would say the general answer would be, if you've got a local authority that can apply, yes. But if you do have a specific local issue whereby it has to be bid through somebody else, but I think we need to double check Connecting Cumbria's kind of governance, if that's actually eligible under section 31. So I think in that specific question, we would need to take that back. I think I would advise that we would probably be looking at a sole local authority. But again, if there is a specific local issue, maybe we can take a look at that outside of this conversation.
Thank you, Kate. The next question. Now, we weren't aware of this. So Northern Ireland LAs do not have responsibility for street infrastructure. So that sits within central government. Does that mean Northern Ireland is excluded? I think that raises questions for us about how we engage with the Northern Ireland government on this. We weren't aware of that in our discussions with the Northern Ireland government. I don't know if anyone on DCIT side in policy or commercial have any thoughts on this before we take it away and see what this means for the competition? Okay. So one for us to return to. Thank you and sorry about that. We will bottom that out. Due to procurement rules, we can't decide a supply before tender. So how do you see it's getting letters of support? I think when I was talking about earlier about the consequences of local circumstances when it comes to the match, I think existing procurements are eligible. So if you have already procurements underway in your authority, you already have a relationship there. Letters of support can be helpful. We're not mandating them. I think we need to see evidence that if it's a new procurement, it's deliverable, it's timely, it's affordable, you can do it. But we can kind of pick that up one-to-one in a Q&A after this, if you want to talk that through. Can a LB propose to potentially integrate a bid, assuming a successful outcome as part of Open Networks program? LB, what's an LB? A local borough, Chris? Yes, I think if it's compatible, I mean, if you're successful through the one competition and through your bid to SIPP, if you can demonstrate how the two are complementary without double counting, I think we'd be open to that. I mean, one competition, you'll be getting a result of that, in the next few weeks, I think. So it will be during this competition. So, if the timings work out, then yeah, we're open to that because they are different. But I mean, there are elements in one competition that are kind of relevant to this. Some of the stuff around HDD. Through this competition, we're not mandating open interoperable networks, but we think they're a good idea. So if you are including them in this bid, then that is, fine, and we're good. We're happy to see that join up, that strategic join up. Question from Justin: is the funding all for capital? It's all capital, so it has to be spent on capital. But there are costs that are capitalizable, of course, with any capital spend. Chris again, are we not in early summer, Ray Regions competition? We are. We're in civil service summer. I mean, as Kate said, as soon as we can share more, then we will. Justin, significant part of our area is rural. We see this benefiting isolated rural communities, suffering connectivity and EV charge point rollout issues. Are you looking for high use areas? It would be possible to pass in these communities that may not use as much as in dense. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, really, really, yes, indeed. We know that rural has a different set of challenges from urban. And so through this, we do want to see, a spread of use cases, be that high density urban, be it rural, be it coastal. We're really, really interested because it's quite a small program in terms of money, but we're testing something new and we want to kind of take that and see how viable these land posts are in terms of aggregating demand, demonstrating that demand, increasing connectivity, looking at other applications. So whatever we learn from it, we want to share, across the UK, as we do with other competition learnings, benefits and outcomes. So rural, definitely, Justin. William Osborne, PAS 190 refers to replacement lighting. Yep. There will thus be a telecoms master principle, therefore require a prior approval app. What would be the advantage to do this rather than a normal macro street monopole? Now that's slightly out of my area of expertise. I don't know if Diane is on the call and wants to kind of chip in here.
Yes, hi, Will. Good to see you. So, I mean, I would defer this to the industry supply chain. This is really a deployment scenario decision from neutral host operators and MNOs. I think I would probably need to take your comment about the prior approval offline just to double check that. I don't know if Jamie has a view on that in terms of planning policy and regulation. But yeah, in terms of sort of advantages of providing coverage and capacity. That's the deployment scenario decision by the telecom supply chain. So I would very much defer to the companies in that space deploying small cells in terms of advantages and disadvantages.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, I think I'll just add to that. Thanks, both. In terms of, obviously, this is primarily about mobile connectivity, wireless connectivity, but obviously we're also looking for other use cases that are going to go on that as well. So wireless streetworks monopole, obviously looking for wide area coverage. This is looking at a particular focus, a particular challenge. So yeah, as Dan was saying, it's kind of depending on what those deployment plans are going to be. On the planning side of things, I think, yeah, we'd have to look at that on a case-by-case basis, but that would be for the local authority to have a look at. Thanks.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I just take this offline with you, Jamie, because I think this is something you've not considered in full. As any replacement street column for the purposes of telecoms, therefore becomes a telecoms mast, and therefore is a prior approval application. Irrespective of what other uses you may want for it, such as EV charging, the primary reason is for a telecoms mast, and as such it comes under Part 16, as we've discussed in the past. It would be something that I would want to talk to you about, because in that case, why don't we just build a macro site? What's the point of having a small cell on a monopole? But I don't want to take up people's time on that.
That's fine, we could pick that up separately. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Lots of, as we expected, challenge and querying, really helpful. So Trish, perhaps these conversations are already happening in other authorities, but is it really realistic to expect LAs to secure match funding for supplies and forwards? I mean, I touched upon this. It may well not be, but as I said, we are open when it comes to the match of looking at existing procurements. So anything you have in train, if you can bring in the new columns as part of that, that should make that easier. Genevieve, so CAs are excluded. No, according to the Section 31 guidance about how we define a local authority, they are in there. Are you only anonymous? Are you only looking for bids that include multiple added use cases, or can it be focused? Yeah. So per column, I think we're looking at one small cell plus something. We would like to see, though, across all the columns you purchase, multiple use cases where possible. So, you know, some columns can just have the cell and the EV, others maybe some IoT and the cell. But per column, yeah. If you want more than two, that's also within scope, but we're looking to see at least a cell plus something. Keith Henry, next. You mentioned small cells. Knowing that MNOs require macro at street level for capacity, then have you considered these as well as being part of the requirements being included within the small multi-purpose columns? We spoke about this. So it's my understanding that the PAS 191 standard, the columns are only designed for small cells, not macro. I think we went through this. Again, Dayan, sorry. That's my understanding of PAS 191. It's not macro radios at street level. I think Kate as well, you had some views on this. So if one of you want to chip in on that one.
Sorry, Paul. I've lost the track of the questions on it.
We've got a lot of questions. So this is from Keith.
Yeah. No. So this is one is from Keith Henry. No, that's
great.
I've got to say I'm a little bit stumped by this one because it's not the use case I'm familiar with in terms of kind of a design and deployment of the network. So yes, I have to admit I haven't personally seen over a number of years a use case where there are micro radios at the street level. So perhaps want to take offline and to discuss the specificity of this, because generally we would assume that rooftop deployments in specifically in dense areas would be macro, and the street level would be some type of a micro or a macro cell. So yes, it's, as I say, it's the first time I've kind of seen this type of question, so maybe we can take it offline and just kind of unpick it a little bit more.
Thank you. We're keeping a log of things that we'll need to pick up later. Chris again, could you have the same use case in different columns? Look at smart charging in town v rural. Yeah, because I mean, it's kind of a different use case, isn't it? Because the kind of use in rural is going to be different from urban. So I think we'd get that. I think that would be quite an interesting use case. So we'd consider that in scope. Yeah. Simon, Section 33 of the Act does not mention unitaries. Does it leave? Can I get back to you on that, Simon? Because that's the second question. We kind of got advice from this, and I thought it did. But rather than digging through the Section 33 now, let's come back to that if that's okay. Simon, what evidence of wireless telegraphy act authorization will we need to support? I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. Do we have anyone from commercial that can give a response to that? Sorry, Simon, that's kind of two for two there. We're letting you down. Does anyone know about the wireless telegraphy act authorization? Do you want to say a bit more about that, Simon? Do you want to kind of come in on the chat on that? Because or Dave, who's volunteered.
I think what Simon might be referring to, and I'm having an educated guess here, is the fact that you shouldn't be operating a service without the requisite licensing, and therefore I'm assuming that the question is what form of license access, or is it envisioned somehow that this is all going to be MNO only, and therefore that the spectrum will have already been allocated and there would be routes to obtain it that would satisfy WT regulations. Is that roughly right, Simon? Just a yes or a no?
Okay. I don't know if Simon's still around. I mean, so for this, of course, we will need spectrum, you know, from an MNO or a neutral host operator. Otherwise, you know, it's not going to work. Maybe Simon, if you could drop something into the mailbox with a little bit more detail, if Dave's right, or if he's not, then just let us know, and we'll endeavour to give you a fuller response. Julia, good, an easy question. Yes, would you welcome bids from LAs that did not participate? Absolutely. You know, the DCIA1 pilots did, you know, are doing some of them really useful work. You know, great to have them as part of the program. If you're an existing pilot, then, you know, apply. If you're not, equally, if you feel that you've got what it takes, we welcome applications from absolutely anyone, notwithstanding the Northern Ireland issue, which we will check up on. Anonymous, we still have a large pushback in terms of the safety of 5G. What is being done to address this, and do you have a suite of documents that can? We do. So through the 5G test beds and trials program, we worked a lot with the Department of Health and Social Care and the standards bodies. So we do have guidance and documentation that we used with UK 5G. When they were around, we ran some public safety workshops for local authorities to give them the materials that they needed to kind of satisfy some of those local concerns. So we do have all that stuff. I think what we'll do is that when we start publishing stuff on the Q&A log, we'll include that and we'll give a link to all the guidance and document. Yes, Mike, we will do that. I can't do it now because I don't want to go offline and try and dig them out, but we will. I tell you what, we can share them when we send around the slides, so you got them immediately. But we'll put it on the log. Keith, we are delivering poems for street level deployments of macro, which are fully compliant with ICNIRP and are concealed with. Oh, okay. Okay. Great. So Keith's offering to help. Is there any additional weighting for use cases which include renewables? There's no additional weighting, but you know, we do have net zero commitments. I think, you know, we'd be happy to see that. It may well, if there was one bid versus another, if they were equal, one had renewables in, it's not scored. I think it's something we'd be interested to see, but no, it's not specifically scored or weighted in this competition. Rich Greenslade, we have our street columns on a PFI. Presumably, we need to find locations separate to that, such as business parks, green areas, rather than replace existing live assets. So this is kind of familiar from the work of DCIA. Diane, again, do you want to come in on this? Because I know the area PFI is quite complicated.
Yeah, I mean, for the purposes of this pilot, I think realistically we're looking in most cases at new deployments or deployments of new columns. I know there is a related question to that as well, which we'll probably cover as well. But we are predominantly looking at PAS 191 new deployments, which would mean most likely, I would imagine, outside of your current PFI arrangement. However, if you are constrained by the PFI arrangement, we have had another work stream in DCIA previously, which looks into ways in resolving this. So perhaps there's a quick way of providing a resolution to your PFI constraint. I know that's a very broad statement. It depends on your particular circumstances. So what I would say is, get in touch with us. Let's share the specific details of the situation you're facing in your PFI arrangement, and let's see what can be done.
Thanks, Dan. Simon, you need an agreement with an MNO and other means of access to mobile spectrum in order to determine small cell and so on. It is a fundamental requirement. We do need bids to have spectrum in them. Diana, you want to?
Yeah, so just quickly add to that, because also there's another question I think we accidentally may have skipped from Chris Taylor, which is asking about private 5G rather than established MNO, just one above.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, we are very much relying on an established network infrastructure supply chain here. So whether it's the case of MNO small cell deployment through one of their delivery partners, neutral host providers, or whether it's a private network. But yes, we are relying here on established ways in which the supply chain secures access to spectrum and the rights to that spectrum. So that's just the nature of that if you're looking at the telecoms use case.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Sorry for skipping that, Chris. Graham, if we have some newly erected streetlights that we want to retrofit, so using PAS 190 rather than one, is that no? It's great that you're doing that, but this competition is specifically funding for new infrastructure. So please do it, but you can't use your grant for this. It's outside the scope of this competition. Thank you, Rich. Okay, it's great. Okay, that's it in the Q&A. Is there stuff in the chat as well that people have been using? Oh wow. Okay. Okay. I can't find.
I think, Paul, that we just move on. I think
no, I'm just checking. It's fine. I think, no, I just wanted to dip in while there was a pause. Okay, so okay. KPSM partnership. Will the recording of the meeting be shared? And this isn't for us, but is for another department of the council. Yes. So we will publish this because not everyone interested in the competition will be able to attend this call. So we want to. So we'll publish it. I think on gov.uk, maybe UK 10. I'm not sure, but we'll get it out there, and we will disseminate it and share it and signpost it so that everyone has the opportunity to see it. Is a requirement that projects involve elements of 5G. Other use cases such as millimeter wave, fixed wireless access may be more compelling. I'm going to bring Jamie in on this, if that's okay, given the policy around 5G and our kind of views on that.
Sorry, let me just find, is it David's question?
David Burns, yeah. Is it a requirement that projects have elements of 5G?
Well, obviously, in the kind of assessment, we'll be looking at the primary aim of this is digital connectivity. So I don't think Paul would say anything about waiting at the moment, but no. We would be obviously looking for digital connectivity, wireless connectivity use cases as part of this, as alongside the other use cases that we kind of set out earlier. But obviously our big focus is on rollout of wireless connectivity. So I think you can read between the lines in terms of if you've got 5G as part of that, it'll put you in kind of good stead when you put your application in. But I don't think we can kind of say, Paul, can we exactly what weighting we're going to give to specific elements?
No, I think, you know, we are looking for 5G, but if other, I mean, FWA, I mean, that could be interesting, but, you know, we are interested in 5G, but as part of a HETnet, you know, it's not exclusively 5G. If you've got other technologies, networking technologies that would benefit, then we're interested in seeing them. Simon, the availability of PAS 191 infrastructure, there are supplies. I think it's part of pulling together the business case for this. I mean, maybe Kate can come in here. I think the answer is yes, but Kate, do you want to step in terms of Simon Park's latest question? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Simon. Yes, so we did carry out engagement with some local authorities and with the market prior to putting the business case together to understand, is this feasible within the timelines that we would be set with, et cetera, et cetera. So correct that there isn't any PAS 191 kind of poles manufacturers. Part of the project would be to manufacture those. And yes, we did speak to the market around the times. And yes, there is time within this project. We actually have added on more time than what we think is required to make sure that there is time as a buffer, just in case. We know how these things can slip very easily. So ultimately, yes, the time frame does allow for the manufacture, the installation, the testing of the use cases, to do the wrap up, the lessons learned, et cetera, et cetera. And we have engaged with market on those timescales as well.
Thanks, Kate. And Shabby's kind of commented there as well. Same organisations that currently make poles, but will be adapting, changing them to the new PAS 191 specs. Tony, would public Wi-Fi low power be acceptable? I think as a use case, definitely. Very interested in that. Michael Snaith, as part of your benchmarking preparation for this project, did you engage with local authorities to ascertain whether such initiatives were already taking place? In such cases, can local authorities bid for this funding? Yes. I don't know. I mean, mainly through our work around DCIA and the EAG and other kind of engagement and market testing around 5G adoption. There's a lot of activity going on. There's a lot of very forward-looking authorities who are operating already in this space. And absolutely, I mean, if our grant can complement what you're already doing, really, really happy to see bids based on that.
Yeah, just to back that up, Paul, yes, we did engage with local authorities, and yes, some are undertaking such initiatives / have plans to undertake such initiatives. So yes is the answer. And just to reassure that, yes, we did carry out engagement.
I think Kate's kind of addressed Simon Pike's next question. Is there time within the bidding process for a supplier to give a firm quote for PAS 191 poles? I think based on our research, we think yes. Yeah. Did you factor in the extended times required for internal sign-off and procurement processes too?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. We have, I mean, there's some things that are new to us, but these are things definitely we kind of built in. M&O's plans for small cells across 4G and 5G. Are they involved? Have they been informed of this project? Yeah, I mean, we engage with the M&Os on this throughout the process. I don't know if there are any M&Os on the call. I mean, it's a number accepted. Dan?
Just to add to that, yes, there's been this is a continuation from the previous DCIA program and a development of the PAS 119 191. So MNOs and the industry supply chain has been involved in the development of the standards over a period of 1 year to begin with. And as Xavier has mentioned there, we are in, this has been informed by and in dialogue with the MNO from day one for a very long time. So yes, they have been engaged. They are fully aware of this, and I'm sure some of them are considering this in context of their deployment plans.
Great, thank you. Are there any more questions? Remember, if you think of something later on, just use the mailbox. And there are a few things where we've committed to get back to you on points that you have raised, and we will do that. Are there any more at this stage, or shall we move on? Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. really kind of informative, engaging session. Some things for us to take away. So I'll hand back to Alberto now, who'll be conducting the last bit of the session. Over to you, Alberto.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you to everybody that asked those really valuable questions. So moving on, it is the opportunity for some of you who sent us some materials in advance to do a little pitch for everybody on this call. So we have a series of 7 speakers today from the entities that you can see on the screen right now. So we will start with the first one, which is Pramac Generac UK, and I would like to pass it on to Cruz Padayachi to tell us about his company and what he has to say. Just for everybody to know in advance, please, let's try to stick to about, I think we're quite good with time. We're a bit ahead of time, so you could have about 5 minutes each, and then we will make sure to finish as soon as we can. So, Cruz, over to you.
Thanks, Alberto. Good morning, everybody. We can move on to the next slide. Allow me to introduce Pramac Generac. The next one. Yeah. As an enterprise, our strategy is powering a smarter world, and this is made possible through our 10,000 employees in more than 150 countries. We're listed on the New York Stock Exchange with a revenue of around $4.5 billion US. And this is as a result of core focus areas where we aim to improve energy resilience and independence, optimize energy efficiency and consumption, as well as protect and build critical infrastructure. Moving on to the next slide, we'll share our goal. So our goal is to decarbonize the telecoms industry. The telecoms industry is experiencing, like most, if not all companies, a rise in pressure from customers, investors, and regulators to reduce their carbon footprint and play their part in solving the climate crisis. We see that from the migration 2G to 3G, 3G to 4G, and now 4G to 5G, each one of these successive technologies are more efficient. And so too should the power solutions, where we transition from legacy systems to more sustainable alternatives. As a global group, our corporate purpose is to lead the evolution to more resilient, efficient, and sustainable energy solutions. And in doing so, we have a broad portfolio of products to support the energy transition. Pramac's experience in supplying the telecoms market has enabled us to design and develop a bespoke range of power solutions that incorporate a number of unique features specific to the telecoms industry. Moving on, we'll show you how we do it. In essence, we want to leave the typical legacy systems, which include a heavy reliance on grid power together with fossil fuel backup, and migrate to a more renewable ecosystem where we develop on-site power generation through hybrid systems. We facilitate the tie-in of renewable alternatives and develop on-site energy storage with an option of exporting energy to the grid as an alternative source of revenue. In this migration toward net zero, as Paul alluded to earlier, we try and reduce our, in the first scenario on the right, we try and reduce our reliance on the grid, input in renewable resources or energies, and store them in our battery systems and use it for masts or lampposts, or even in this case, EV charging facilities if required. From there, we can even reduce our reliance on the grid even more, where we just plug in our hybrid power sources, tie in again with renewables, and then again, energy storage out to our power source. So we'd love to partner on the journey to net zero. And yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to connect with you guys. There's a barcode on the bottom left-hand corner where you can connect with me on LinkedIn, our company website. Happy to collaborate, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks a lot, Cruz, for that pitch. And moving on to the next one, we have David Burns from Wisdom. If you would like to come in, and you have about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm David Burns. I am known to a few people as the CEO of Wireless Coverage. We invented some technology called Wisdom. I'm also the chairman of the UK Wireless Internet Service Providers Association, UK Whisper, and that gives us access to quite a lot of members with experience and expertise in building large-scale wireless networks. Thank you. Next slide. Simply, Wisdom is a state-of-the-art piece of technology developed here in the UK. We use deep learning, we use GPU accelerated computing, and we have a 100% coverage model of the UK in high resolution. So we have a digital twin of all of, I should say GB, not United Kingdom. It allows us, with our compute power, to model billions and billions of potential places to site equipment. In the case of street furniture, we have already got over 2 million, it's the slide slightly update, 2 million streetlights mapped. And you can instantly see the relationship from a fixed wireless millimeter wave line of sight perspective from every street lamp to every other street lamp. So you can build complex networks in real time and model billions and billions of scenarios. What that translates to is an efficiency and a measurability. So this scheme so far, what we've heard a lot about is funding of columns, which is great. What we can do is show you specifically which columns will yield the best potential value. So the outcomes from this project will be much greater. You can use less equipment, less assets to deliver the highest possible yield. Next slide. So we are address aware. So in other words, we can model things by address and by location and by coverage. If you want to work with us, we can model your towns and your cities in real time for a range of different types of wireless application, from IoT, Wi-Fi, small cell, fixed wireless on any frequency. Because of the speed and the power that we have in Wisdom, it's about 500,000 times faster than any other wireless planning system in the world. You can instantly model everywhere, which means that you can build an efficient network, minimum investment, minimum time to deliver, because you don't need so many assets. And because we can evaluate each asset and say what is its potential reach to addresses, GPRNs, as well as other assets, we can show you the financial value of those assets, which is useful if you want to sell neutral host services and encourage further engagement. And the Wisdom engine is also fully API driven, which means if you do want to integrate with other systems, you can. But it is a full asset management system in itself, so you can use it to maintain the register of assets that are needed for this project as well. Thank you very much indeed, and look forward to hearing from anyone who wants to do this project efficiently and well.
Sorry, I couldn't find the button. Thank you very much, David, for that. That was really interesting. So moving on to the next pitch will be Julian from Easy Street. So yeah, you've got about 5 minutes, and there you go, over to you.
Lovely. Thank you for allowing us to speak then. So if you could jump onto the next slide, in fact, the next one. I'm talking on behalf today of Easy Street Systems. As stated, I'm Julian Welch. I'm the managing director of a company called New Rylands, who are a market acceleration company in the UK. And we focus on bringing in new technology and new products to create solutions out in the market. Currently, we're focusing on exactly this area, which is, small cells, smart cities, fixed wireless access, whether it's rural or urban densification. We're working directly with operators and other partners. One of the things that we focus on is looking at how it's not just the technology that you've got, but it's actually how can you actually deploy, manage this, monetize it, etc. And also looking at the sort of things like the environmental exposure, etc. We are introducing some, innovative technology around. We've got Easy Street with a smart composite pole, which we believe is sort of PAS 191 ready. If you look at it, we've looked through the documentation from that perspective, and we already comply to the EN40 standards, which have been listed. We're also working with not just the composite pole, but also how can you actually get power and transmission to that. So there's other technologies like a volt server, which is digital electricity, which is a new alternative to AC and DC powering, and it allows you to run power in telecoms ducts. Specifically, we're working with cable manufacturers around with hybrid cables. So you just do one cable run for both power and transmission. And then we're also looking at things like containment, right? Because oftentimes you need things inside of poles. Do you need 12 volts, 24 volts, 48 volts? Do you need a combination of both? What type of assets are you, putting on the poles? So CCTV, ANPR, etc., typically have different requirements, right? But at the end of the day, they all need power and transmission. We're also working within our consortium with some. For instance, we've got a couple of consulting companies that we work with, which are ready to help with things like consortium bids, project management, design, implementation, etc. as well. In relation to Easy Street, specifically around the PAS 191, if you jump onto the next slide for me, please, Alberto. So our poles are multi-use, right? They're built of a composite material. It doesn't matter whether you want to put overhead lines on them, small cells, lighting, CCTV. Doesn't really matter. We've got a catalogue of bracketry that be able to support that. The poles are very, very lightweight. They're 25% lighter than steel poles, wooden poles. And the really exciting thing is that they're very, very quick to install because they're so lightweight. You don't need cranes or anything like that to do it. We've also done away with things like concrete, where we've brought in a composite resin. So we're looking at, not just the actual technology there, but, how can you guys deploy these out in the field, right? And how can it be faster to be able to deploy? So rather than deploying, one pole, coming back, waiting for the concrete to set, etc., closing off the road, we've demonstrated with operators from start to finish, we can get these poles in less than 2 hours, and that's actually having equipment up and running on them. And they, as you see, they're certified from the EN40 perspective. And very environmentally friendly. If you go to the next slide, please. Because they're made of composite material, obviously much better than sort of wood with creosote and all the rest of that. They don't have the rust factors or anything like that. Very UV stable, and they can be recycled as well. They have a very long lifespan. Right, and we can build them with whatever types of fittings that you want. We can have them in different colors, different textures. We can make them to look like heritage as well. So we're interested in working with people on this competition, and my details are there, and we'd be happy to go into it in more detail to explain more of the overall sort of solution components that we have, because we believe that there's much more to it than just a pole. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that pitch. We are going to move on to our next pitch, which will be from Richard Williams from Ontix. So you have about 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alberto. Good morning, everybody. Many familiar faces on this call. And many I'm also hoping to meet. So the first slide, please. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Richard. I'm from Ontix, and we are one of the UK's leading builders of small cell sites across the country. We're a telecoms company that specialises in wireless technologies, but what we primarily do is work with local authorities up and down the country to build small cells and Internet of Things and smart city networks. We've been working with all of the UK MNOs for the past 4 years or so on both developing models for 4G and 5G cellular rollouts. Typically, we use local authority owned assets, so street lighting. So obviously the PAS 191 thing is a particular interest to us. We often work with private landlords too. and we're increasingly involved, and we're getting called upon by local authorities and other parties to talk about smart city and smart place agenda. Next slide, please. So really just a very quick pitch from us. We build the sites, we design the sites. This is what a typical design might look like. We design it to the nth degree. And if you go to the next slide, please. We go from design to real world builds. So there are what small cells look like out in the wild. So if you're ever passing Downing Street or Regent Street or Bond Street or any number of towns or cities across the UK, you'll see our handiwork, hopefully giving you a useful boost to the network where you are. Final slide, please. So for all the local authorities that we're working with and we haven't spoken to you in a while, feel free to get back in touch. And for those that haven't yet met, there are my details. Please reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Richard. Thank you for that pitch. Moving on to the next one, we have Tony from AWTG. So over to you, Tony, about 5 minutes for you to speak. Thank you.
Thanks, Alberto. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, all good. All good on my end.
Thank you. Okay, so next slide, please. One more, next slide. Okay, so AWTG is a leading network and systems integrator. I think all of these solutions will require the services of an integrator at some point to help join things up. As you can see from the pictures at the bottom of the slide, AWTG has been involved with the various DCMS and DSIPP programs throughout as a co-investor in those programs and as an investigation bringing the intellectual property that's required to make 5G work in lots of different scenarios. Right from back in the first 5G testbeds in 2015, working with Surrey University. We've worked with high-speed roadways, we've worked with cities, and we've worked with manufacturing and lots of other environments. So we're very familiar with the challenges of street works and the issues of getting radios to work in those environments, working very closely with BAI in Sunderland and in other locations, same with Freshwave and so on. So we're familiar with this landscape, familiar with the environment, and very willing to help. I think the other thing is, so that's both on the innovation side and on the practicalities of deployment and testing and delivery. The other thing to talk about is, if you go to the next slide, please, Alberto. Again, just to look at we have a complete platform called Flex 5G, which is part of the FRANK program. This is an Open RAN small cell radio, in effect. It's a software-defined radio from Lime, combined with our management platform and various other components to give you a complete, not just 5G network in a box, but basically any network in a box or several networks out of one box. So that's something that we can bring to the table. Next slide, please, Alberto. Again, that project is developed in association with lots of different partners, and we're used to working with these sort of consortium approaches, and including, we mentioned Cambridgeshire on here, but worked with a lot of different local authorities over the last few years to help them to deploy their 5G small cell Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi and low power networks. I think to use Paul's phrase earlier, to deliver that HETnet that's required in these dense urban environments, as well as the more far-flung rural environments, which use some of the similar components, but deployed in completely different styles and so on to make them work. So we're keen to engage with local authorities. We also have a platform called IDAMS, which is an open source digital asset management platform, free to use for local authorities, and we're getting a lot of interest and engagement with MNOs, neutral host players, wanting to use those platforms to engage with local authorities. Free to use, it's on G-Cloud 13, so anybody's interested in that, give me a call or drop me a line on the email address on the last slide, and I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tony. I think I went too far. So there we go. There's Tony's email address on the screen, and we'll be sharing the slides. This is for Tony and everybody else that's pitched today, so you can contact them if appropriate. So the next one we will hear from Raymond from Atran Networks. So Raymond, you've got about 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Atran Networks, please go to the next slide. That's that. One more. There we go. Ooh, that's come out a bit back to front. It should have a white background. Yes, but Atran Networks SE is the new name for a combination of Adtran and Adva. Most of you, I think, will have come across us in some form. So Adtran very much provides the residential broadband services across the globe. We have quite a big few customers in the UK. Notably, probably 70% of fibre broadband infrastructure providers are using our equipment. That includes potentially many in your regions, as local authorities are quite likely to be having some of our customers. So we can definitely support and help you in bringing them together with yourselves and ourselves on these particular projects. And then on the Adva side, we provide connectivity to all the MNOs in the UK, all small, large businesses, and we provide high-speed connectivity for all the data centers. So we have a saying that says, you're never more than 100 meters from our infrastructure, and you're most likely using it all the time, including, I suspect, many of you will be on our infrastructure right now, connecting to this meeting. So we're everywhere. We're just one of the UK's best kept secrets. As I said, we connect millions of homes, and we continue to connect millions of homes and sites. And by the middle of this decade, and we're in excess of 15 to 20 million sites in the UK will have our connections. We already have solutions with the MNOs in small cells, so we can help on that. As it says in the middle there, innovation is in everything we do. So we are open to innovating our products to meet certain market requirements. So we're quite flexible. It's not a case of we built it, now you've got to find a use case for it. It's more a case of you have a use case, we will go away and build it and bring your use case to life. Next slide, please. Oh, there we are, the pictures. So what can we offer? So in terms of street furniture solutions, I said we already have solutions out there, and you can see that in the poll at the moment. So if you walk past the majority of some street furniture that has got some kind of radio on it, whether it be Wi-Fi or mobile or fiber fixed wireless access, a millimeter wave, it's quite likely in the base of there will be one of our solutions that has been provided by a telecoms connectivity provider, transport provider. So we've designed our solution specifically to meet that marketplace. So it's quite interesting to see that there's been some changes around the PAS 91191. We're super keen to see how that works. The stuff we build obviously needs to meet that criteria. So it's what we call iTemp ready. Okay, so minus 40 to plus 65 degrees. If you think our customers will range from anywhere from someone in the middle of the desert over in the Middle East up to sort of Finland, Iceland, etc., where it's completely opposite on the same day of the year. So we need to meet those. So we can definitely work with you guys to understand your environmentals. Along with that, we are IPX rated in that respect. So obviously it's got all the waterproofs, splash proof, etc. requirement. And specifically because of that, we've made things as low maintenance as we can. So there are a minimal number of moving parts. So the things like fans will be removed, etc. And we work hard then to remove that heat through our designs, especially around the case. You can see there's some that have got fins, etc., to try and move that around. Because of the type of customers we have and the connections we provide them, security is very important. So our products come with what's called Connect Guard, okay, which is a way of securing the actual connectivity itself. So many of you will have knowledge of high-level security protocols such as IPsec, or we take that down to layer 2 and layer 1, where we encrypt the actual ones and zeros before they even leave the site. So security obviously is quite key as we go forward, and we can definitely provide solutions there. We have won many awards for being the low power consumption providers. So our equipment is targeted at being as low power as possible. So in line with some of the previous presenters here, who talk about power, etc., and have made comment around eco and green, we very much can bring that to the table alongside the other presenters. I've put something about data rates for those of you that are interested. We can get boxes that small and up and running from as low as 1 gigabits to 100 gigabits. Again, for those that are techie out there, that is from fiber broadband solutions all the way through to high-speed dark fiber, fixed wireless access through millimeter wave, IoT, mobile. As you can appreciate, because we've been in this industry for decades and because we've had use cases presented to us globally, we have an array of solutions that we can bring to you and work with you maybe to bring some new ones to life specifically for the UK. And again, as been talked about power around AC/DC, we have different ways. We also have options where you'd require no power because it's what we call a passive option, where the light is transferred from the end device to the core, and therefore the transport layer in the middle doesn't require powering either. So again, it can be a lot eco, but also makes it more interesting when you've got areas, and I think it's been mentioned on the questions around rural areas where potentially power is a problem, or access to power or high voltages may be more problematic. There are ways around that by using passive solutions. And we can work with you guys to bring that to life. Point of note, just from our experience, okay, whilst we're here around temperatures, etc. And I don't know if this has been considered by the PAS 191 people, but last summer was very hot, and some of our customers were having issues with the equipment that we've provided in there going above 65 degrees. And it turned out that there was very little air movement inside the pole. Okay, as you can appreciate, most poles are built to stop the water from coming in, which means they're potentially very airtight. And even though we're shifting the heat out of our components out through fins, etc., there is an expectation that there is some kind of airflow to allow the heat to be dissipated. So if we do get another hot summer, and I don't know about you, but where I am, it's been at least 2 or 3 weeks of sun. And a lot of these poles tend to be painted black, which doesn't help either. Okay, they start to get extremely hot inside, and so you'll start to cook some of the equipment in there. So just one to bear in mind, okay, for those of you that are looking at this, think about airflow in these poles, because there's a lot of kit going in there inside as much as there is outside. And on that point, another area of interest is maintenance. Okay, clearly, if things are going to be put inside, they need to be looked at regularly, potentially for maintenance purposes. Please consider access to the infrastructure you want to put inside the pole. We've had situations where we've turned up and the opening to the pole is facing the road. Not great for health and safety. Clearly, the person who's opening the front of the pole who wants to work in it doesn't want to be dodging the 4:30 traffic in the afternoon rush. So please be aware of these types of things. Access and maintenance is just as critical as designing the infrastructure there to support all of these types of technologies. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to say, mention again who we are. So in the UK, we are registered with Companies House. We have sites at York and in Basingstoke. Okay, some of you may know us already. We have experience with DSIT projects, and we're currently leading on a 5G project, and we're a partner on various other DSIP projects in the 5G space. And we ourselves are developing a particular platform specifically for neutral host providers across the globe. So this could very much align with that. Our main aim here is to support these projects, okay, and grow the UK connectivity ambitions. And what I mean by that is this is not about generating cash for us, okay. We're, for this type of funding and size of funding, it's more about us trying to put back into the industry to grow that industry rather than looking to fund anything new, etc. It's not a problem at all. And as I said, we've got 70% of the UK's fiber providers as our customers. So within your regions, if you don't know who they are, then we can definitely put you in contact with them, and we can help you with understanding where their assets may be and how we can align them with ourselves and yourselves to bring your projects to life. And those are my contact details if you'd like to get hold of me. Thank you, Alberto.
Thanks a lot. Let's move on to our next and final pitch of today, which is from Stuart from Exponential E Limited. So Stuart, over to you. You've got about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me? I'm on a call at the moment on the phone because I'm at another session at Tech UK. Can everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you. I'm not sure about the rest, but I think everything's okay on our end here. Yeah, we've got some
Perfect.
thumbs up, so that's promising.
Excellent, that's great. So I'm running blind, but I'm assuming the slides are on the screen. So yeah, if you go to the first slide, so essentially Exponentially is a UK-based carrier integrator. So we connect, protect and transform the heart of UK government and healthcare. So essentially our mission is to build a better, smarter and more sustainable future. Essentially we do that in 3 ways. So we connect people, processes and places to help build better outcomes. We protect data, information, critical systems to help ensure safer data, and we transform digital platforms to build a more sustainable future. Now, the next slide is a video, so I'm not entirely sure that's going to work on this call, but obviously happy for people to view that at their leisure afterwards. So if you wanted to skip through to the final slide, which also you might need to click it a couple of times, and you should see 3 layers of the areas that we're working within local connectivity partnerships. So essentially what we do within local connectivity partnerships is aggregate together public sector use cases. So that could be CCTV, public sector networks, footfall counting, Wi-Fi, and other use cases. We then aggregate together enterprise use cases within a region, and then we would work with indirect partners. So those could be altnets, neutral host, mobile providers, community-based connectivity providers, etc. So we aim to aggregate different use cases within an area on a build once and utilize many times scenario. And then we work with multiple infrastructure providers. So we work with OpenReach, Virgin, Zayo, ITS, CityFibre, to name a few of the infrastructure providers that we work with, and a number of neutral host operators. So our aim is to work in partnership with local authorities and with other organisations in order to build those use cases, drive those outcomes, and then essentially work in an ecosystem that brings those elements together for the benefit of that local region. So very keen to. There are some familiar names and faces on the call already, but love to make some new acquaintances and see how we can work together on this exciting initiative. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Stuart. Just for reassurance, currently your contact details are on the screen, so everybody can see this. And again, we will be sharing these slides later. So thank you very much to everybody that took the time to do a pitch. Hopefully that was useful and valuable for everybody on the call. Just to reassure, we had a couple of issues with the picture that we couldn't quite see the background as it was sent initially. I think that was a lost in translation issue with going from PowerPoint to Google Slides, but rest assured that I've amended that, and the final document that will be shared amongst everybody will include how it was sent initially. So apologies for that in advance. I am going to now pass it on to my colleague Paul, who will be giving us some closing remarks and ending the event. So over to you, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, Alberto, and thanks for everyone who pitched. I picked up in the chat some responses to some of the Q&A. Unitary authorities are eligible, combined authorities are eligible, and Tony asked if SIPP funding could complement other funding from DSIT, so HDD or innovation regions. The answer is yes. I mean, we intend all these programs to be complementary. towards our wider aims. So providing you can meet SIPP objectives, you don't double count, and you have the capacity to deliver, then yeah, it could be part of a broader piece of work. Bit of housekeeping at the end there. If you've got any more questions, as I said, direct them to the mailbox. There's a few things we'll pick up after this, but if there's nothing else from anyone, I just want to thank you all for your time and effort engaging with this process. It's great to see so many of you here. Thanks to our speakers and to Diane and to Shabby for their contribution and help in answering some of the tricky questions. Okay, hands have been raised. Lynn? And it's gone. Is that an accidental hand? Okay, I see so. Brilliant. Thank you again, everybody, for your time. I hope you all bid. And we look forward to seeing your applications. Any Q&A, direct them to us, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you again for your time. 28 minutes back. Enjoy the weather. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.